presenting. We have two exciting topics today. One, I think that's the longest topic that we've ever had in a UX feedback session, but I think the topic is worth the time. So Lukasz is going to give us a proper deep dive into Grafana navigation and how we can make it better. And then afterwards, I will talk briefly in comparison about how we can improve the logs navigation in Explore. Cool. So, Lukasz,
yes.
over to you.
Thank you, Jess. Hopefully, I will not go over the time, although there's a huge opportunity to do that with that topic, definitely. There's a link for a short usability session that you might watch afterwards if you haven't had an opportunity yet. I will be referring to that a bit, so you can definitely check it out. And yeah, I will start sharing my screen. Oh, yes. Wait a second, because I need to set up. I will be kicked off for a sec because I need to allow Zoom to record my screen. So back in 1 minute or maybe faster.
That was faster.
Yeah, okay. So please tell me if you can see my screen.
If it's an empty screen, then yes.
Yeah, definitely, yeah, but you can see the window, I guess. So yeah, I don't want to spoil anything for you.
Ooh.
Yeah, okay. So a bit of an introduction. This is a complicated topic. So if I will be speaking chaotically, please stop me. And if you have any questions, like please do as well. And I think like this is like a perfect example of a design problem, which is usually stated one way. And then when we go deeper into that, we understand that it was not really the problem that we stated at the beginning, but something else is there. And on that terms, the misleading part might be that we are talking about a new navigation, which means that, oh, if we do a new navigation and just put everything that we have right now there, Grafana will be more navigable in the future. But unfortunately, that is not the case. And there are like few reasons why. So first of all, if you have watched that's a short session that I've sent, you will notice that people who are not using Grafana on a daily basis get lost on even a basic level of navigating Grafana. So reaching out dashboards or finding the specific dashboard. And the reason is that our homepage has an icon of a dashboard, is a dashboard. And when you are clicking on the dashboards on the navigation, you actually land on the homepage and not in the dashboards. And if you want to browse dashboards, you need to open not dashboards, which is a homepage on that case, but you actually need to launch a search, which is a browsing list for the dashboards. And of course, you can reach that list within the dashboards itself, but then you need to remember that it is called manage dashboards. So it is very complicated. People get confused by that. What is more, on our navigation, we just stuff more and more things, which are either like only 2 icons for people who are viewers and with restricted access to many elements of Grafana if they're, for example, in an enterprise environment, or they have everything if they're admins of such an instance with all the apps, shortcuts thrown there. So its navigation is either like huge or really small. So in the end, we have like 3 types of information architecture. Like that's a basic thing for most systems. So we have like a system information architecture, so how it works under the hood. We have the UI that is telling people what's the information architecture, and we have like information architecture that is in the minds of people. So a mental model that people put to the system, thinking, oh, how it will work. And in our case, all of those three information architectures are disembodied. So there is no translation between system UI and the mental model. Each of those information architectures works differently. So this is the biggest problem actually that we are facing, and you will probably see some more. So, but yeah, back to the project that I am actually talking about. So with thinking about the new navigation, I had like definitely few things on my mind. So first of all, do not break anything. So changing the navigation potentially can disrupt like everything, even like our relations with community and with customers who are building their own plugins, etc., etc. So it is important, at least for me in that project, to propose something that can work easily with what we have right now. So it will not require like redesign of the whole Grafana from start to the end. The second thing is that the vertical space is precious in Grafana. So stacking a lot of navigations as a horizontal bars definitely is not going to work. My goal was also to make that navigation narrow viewport friendly, either if we are talking about mobile or just like making our browser screens narrower. It should make a bridge to the cloud portal, which is more and more important. We are lacking breadcrumbs currently, so introducing breadcrumbs and introducing more levels of navigation, maybe not in that specific form, definitely. And last but not least, probably we'll need a new homepage or a template for a homepage. Give flexibility, like, or more flexibility to us and to third-party developers. Maybe think about paid features that might be part of that new navigation concept, and definitely be future-proof. So all those things I had in mind when I was doing the designs, but the thing that I struggled the most was actually like, what is the metaphor that can explain Grafana structure? Because what we have right now is that we have stacks and instances of Grafana. So that's the level zero that I sometimes say to myself. Then we have the Grafana itself, so the thing that we see when we log into Grafana, and we have a lot of apps that are running within that Grafana, and some of them are core, like Dashboard, Explorer, or Search on that part, because it's just like a list of dashboards, and some are just coming pre-installed differently for different kinds of users. So cloud customers have different pre-installed apps than the open source customers. So I was like wondering, what's the metaphor? And I couldn't find it in any application or in any app. And in the end, I found that metaphor in something that is just like at the reach of your hand. And that is basically the operating system, because Grafana, with all those new features and all those new products that we put into it, is becoming more and more like a observability operating system. And there are many analogies. So first of all, the apps are usually self-contained. So the apps are complicated, but you just run inside apps. Of course, we have like some links between them, so you can jump from Explore to dashboards, etc., etc. But in general, most apps are self-contained. They are usually multi-level, so you go deeper inside those apps as well. Some apps are core, so you cannot remove a Finder from macOS. You can install more. There are some elements that are like system status elements, like notifications or just a clock. And you have a customizable dock and a menu. And on the OS, you switch users. For us, we can switch instances or stacks. So the structure that gave me is actually nothing like that seems like a completely new concept. So it's actually the navbar that is familiar to us that should actually be on the level of an operating system navigation. And then we can introduce like a better navigation, especially on the application level. So to allow apps to allow people to more easily navigate within the apps on the first level, maybe introduce the concept of navigating the apps on the second level, which is paradoxically not something that we are doing right now, but we'll get to that at some point, and the breadcrumbs. And with that, we get a much more vertical space, and we get much more flexibility, and we can think about like better navigability of Grafana. And of course, we can introduce the concept of the homepage, but we can as well have a switcher for stacks or for instances, although I don't know if that's a thing right now. Maybe it can in the future, but stacks can be changed or switched definitely. And we can then have a bridge back to the Grafana cloud. So I will show you mockups in a few seconds, but because I was discussing this concept with Torkel, Dominic and Natalia in the morning as well, I noticed that Torkel was asking a lot about what happens afterwards. So what happens on a level of, for example, navigating the specific dashboard. And this is the part which is actually in my mind, like in progress and the next step. So be aware that what I'm showing you right now is a navigation from stacks to Grafana as a metaphor of operating system and applications, but I'm still in progress of figuring out navigation inside specific objects. And what are those objects? Well, those objects are those things that people create when they're inside specific apps. So what can be this object or that thing? Well, it can be a dashboard, it can be a report, it can be a data source, it can be a plugin, and usually we see this in Grafana in this form. So either as a dashboard, or maybe as a playlist, because here we are inside dashboard, but we are actually inside a specific playlist. So that's an object. Or maybe inside a specific plugin in that example, a GitHub one. The interesting part is that we can also have an object of specific data source, on that case, the CSV data source, or an object of a report. The funny thing here is that on the reports, what you see on tabs is a navigation, the first level of navigation for reporting up. But what you see here on the data sources, although it looks completely the same, that is the navigation for that specific data source, which is CSV. So here we are inside an object that has its own navigation. And here we are inside an object that actually doesn't have a navigation, but what we see is the navigation of the element above. So yeah, that is Grafana right now. And you're probably bored, so now you will see mockups. I just need to find them somewhere here. Oh, here they are. So how that structure actually looks like. So it doesn't seem like a rocket science, because it isn't, because navigation is our infrastructure or a way to move around the city, and not a fireworks that we see on the Christmas Eve. So what we have here is the Grafana Navigation Bar as we know it right now, but limited to core applications, search, explore, and dashboards, and other applications being put here as something that is pre-installed or chosen by people, just as your dock or your Windows menu is. And the rest of the screen is actually an application with its specific app navigation. On the top, the first level of navigation and the breadcrumbs, and maybe on the upper right part also as part of navigation, some action buttons, or maybe some specific elements like settings and profiles that are usually distanced from the rest of the elements. And the good thing about that navigation is that it works on a narrower screens, because if we are having less and less horizontal space, then we can just put those elements under more or under expandable menu. And that concept works even on mobile. And here you can see the screens that are 320 to 480. So that's a mobile phones that doesn't exist even more, I believe. And the Grafana navigation that resembles like a mobile navigation as well. So other things that go with that concept and the potential flexibility for the future. The second level of navigation, so possibility to not only see the first level, but also the second level. So if we are on the e-commerce, that element here would be shoes, and that second level of navigation would be shoes for kids, shoes for sports, and shoes for hiking, maybe. What we can also put on that structure is, for example, wizards. So then we have a page, a breadcrumb, so how to reach that page, and then additional information about the stepped process that someone is following on that page. I haven't figured out all the details yet because this is first about the structure, but there are a lot of things that we might consider, like different styling of the navigation elements, placing the action buttons as well on that nav bar so it is surfaced more, and including more playful breadcrumbs that can also unfold or show its content when we hover over those elements. And it works as well for colored versions of apps or the whole navs. And the nice thing about that is that with that structure, so with that metaphor of Grafana navigation understood as a open operating system navigation, we have a possibility to like imagine that, yeah, it can be actually like a dock. So I just launch an application, and what I have is a dock-like navigation. And we can even think about it more like a Miro maybe style nav that can expand and do various things. And yeah, we could even consider the horizontal navigation, but I would say that this takes too much of a vertical space of the interface. And of course we can have that OS level navigation on the right side as well. Maybe that can be an option for people as well. But let's dig deeper, because what this gives us is also a possibility to have a switcher between the stacks. So here we can switch stacks or go to Cloud Portal. We can consider an expanded version of navigation. If we click on the Grafana logo, we can see just the whole structure of Grafana with the first level of navigation per application already visible. And we can have this nice navigation for a user profile with some additional features that we don't have right now, like recently viewed pages, etc., etc. So how it would look like on an example of navigating Grafana with that new structure compared to the old structure. Based on the dashboard, it would on homepage to dashboards, it would look like this. Right now, we have a homepage like that. I already mentioned that we probably need to change a homepage. So it doesn't look like a dashboard. It looks more like a introduction to Grafana and portal to start interacting with Grafana. So it means like always expanded and always visible structure of Grafana. So down to the first level per application. We might have just big search input here, so so people don't have to click if they know what they're looking for when entering Grafana, or even like a possibility to show what's new, as that is something that is very often happening with today's apps. And then what happens if we are going to dashboards? This is how it looks right now. This is how it can look with that concept. First of all, we should have browse here. And so the manage is like a second element here. But if we click dashboards, we are actually landing on the browse page that just lists the dashboards. So from here, not like from search, but from here, we can actually enter the dashboard. And currently, dashboard looks like this. With this new concept, it can basically look like that. So almost the same. And I think that's a good thing, because this doesn't make us to restructure Grafana from the ground up when we are doing this project, so we can be backward compatible and work like dimension by dimension or step by step. But of course, we can play a bit with that concept of navigating inside an object. So we might have just a back button, but we might also have more like a breadcrumb navigation that allows you to jump back to folder or jump back to the dashboards, or something more playful like this one is also possible. But this I haven't explored much yet. But with that idea, if you jump to settings for the specific dashboard, you will land on a page like that. And of course, this is like a old tab navigation, and we can redesign it a bit to be more like a menu than tabs in that form. But here you just you can quickly go back to the dashboard, and you know where you are. And we have that save button not here but there, because it is about the whole page. Other examples, explore. I really like that example because here nothing changes, basically, because the explore app is just name of the app and the select, and that is great because like this is really important screen, so we are not changing anything here, and still it's a redesign, so double win. On the example of configuration, it looks like this right now. With the new concept, it can look like that. And yeah, just breadcrumbs can show you where you are, and we can explore like more visual possibilities with displaying that navigation, and play a bit with action buttons and searches being also on the level of nav or the breadcrumbs bar here, and see how many vertical space we save for our lists of data sources. One last example, do I have it somewhere? Yes, I have it somewhere here, and that's the reports. So we can browse reports, and we see that this is right now becoming ridiculous because where do I have the reports? I don't have reports, but this is like this. Yeah, it previously looked like it would take like almost all the screen, and right now it takes like a fraction of that. And if you go from reports, again, a simple idea is possible. So like being inside an object means that when you're inside, you can just go back. Or if you're inside an object, so you're, for example, editing it, you get a breadcrumb-like navigation that allows you to go back. But again, this is not something that I explored. This is something that Torkel mentioned when we discussed earlier in the morning. So yeah, that's it. And of course, like, don't put too much attention into specific colors or icons or fonts and all that stuff, because that was just playing around. What I would really like to get from you is what are the loopholes, what I haven't considered, and all the questions that can get like that comes to your head. And thank you very much.
Just wanted to say, I'm impressed how little breathing you need.
Yeah,
when you
exactly. I
present.
think the same thing. Like,
wow, you blew my mind with your observability operating system metaphor early on, and I'm gonna have to mull that over as we think about the documentation and stuff. But so yeah, the lot to unpack here. I really love that there is a logical metaphor and how predictable the navigation become. One little nit that is not covered right now, but if you're messing around with menus, that would be a great time. The configuration menu is actually, for organization admins, it's organization settings. Could we please rename it to something that is not configuration? I've already noted this in the notes somewhere, because little known fun fact about this: the server admin menu is for Grafana server admins. You only see it if you are a Grafana server admin. The configuration menu, you only see if you are an organization admin or a team admin, and not otherwise, but we call it configuration. So
yeah, so I think like this adds to the point that when we initially thought or spoke about navigation, we had all those problems in mind, and simply changing the navigation will not solve those problems. So those problems need to be solved by restructuring some of the pages. So as the concept of how to navigate to the list of dashboards, to what you've mentioned as well right now, and to the fact that sometimes the tabbed navigation becomes a navigation for an object, and sometimes an object appears inside a tabbed navigation for its parent. So yeah, it's like pretty complicated, and I think like we need to look like by case by case into how we might improve that. And my goal at some point just became that thing, like not to break those structures, because if we do, then it means that for the 8.0 we need to redo everything, and that's like a too big of a task. But yeah, definitely maybe that's an opportunity or an opening for discussion to go like section by section and revisit that and align it with the rest of the structures that we have. So I'm definitely making note of that.
awesome.
I really love how there was a lot in this presentation, but all in all, I feel like the concept is rather simple, and how flexible it is and future-proof, and kind of no matter how much things we will add to the navigation, it will still work. I mean, at some point, like with information architecture, like you said, you always have to rethink how you structure things at some point, and not to try fit everything into the navigation. But it seems very future-proof. And what's important is that on this very granular level, where people spend a lot of time, which is like Explore View or dashboards, things don't really change with this concept. And it's still the parts of Grafana that are crucial for people, I'm guessing, at this point, are still work as they used to with the old navigation. Yeah, that's my comment.
Yeah, thank you. That was basically my goal, because yeah, we cannot do everything at once. Definitely.
I'm super
agree.
excited.
Yeah, like this is so thorough that I feel like it's really hard to criticize anything on a high level. Like you would have to go into details and discuss details, because many of those are obviously not decided, but the overall concept makes total sense. One topic that I could criticize was that you suggested the option of having this left-handed, like when you click the Grafana logo, you could expand that and show the full structure, which I think is a great idea. Is that like full screen? Because right now it looks like that list is huge and maybe a bit overwhelming. So yeah, I would think maybe that should be full screen or have a good background blur or something.
Yeah. I don't know, to be honest. So for me, that was like a level of details that is below that general structure, but it also like, it really depends on whether we are showing that that whole navigation with elements that are expanded already or not, and if it's if that is in the context of, for example, the home page, or if that is in the context of just like you unfold that navigation to see actually the whole sitemap, that might be the concept as well. Maybe we can have that you just see a small drawer first, and then you can expand it of full screen. I haven't played around with that much, but I think like we can have many of those iterations and test what works and what doesn't. So yeah.
I think Nico has a comment.
I'm super excited. Also because doing like these branding exercises with like some of the stakeholders, this was definitely one of the end conclusions as well, that Grafana is like an operating system for observability, and it fits within this umbrella term that we are the platform that can support all these different data sources and applications and stuff. So on that front, like super excited. I'm actually curious with these tabs thing, is the idea that like I can open multiple like dashboards at the same time and just kind of like flip them back and forth with them, like an Excel spreadsheet?
Yeah, so I think like would be hard because you actually, yeah, I think it's like too much, because you can basically like switch. You can have like explore to see data in parallel. I haven't heard a use case before that people want to see or switch between two dashboards, because usually if you just want to monitor information in parallel, you just put it on the dashboard, so, or within the sections of the dashboard. So I never heard anything about having like two dashboards to see it and to compare it and to switch between them. But maybe that is a case. I just haven't considered that use case.
And the other one is just more, I left in the comment as well, maybe look at if this is an opportunity to embrace like a right mouse click in the how you use Grafana, because a lot of other SaaS software, which is like browser-based applications, they have started to make their own right click. So you can right click on the graph and then say edit, rather than having to look for this more button.
Yeah, that's a really good idea, especially for manipulating specific objects or elements. But I would definitely not resolve to right click to navigate the basic layers of Grafana. But yeah, navigating actions per objects and elements, that's a thing that we can consider definitely. Jess, are we running out of time?
You actually still have 5 more minutes.
Okay, yeah. So.
One
And more.
How do you raise hands in Zoom? Sorry, I wanted to raise a hand. I cannot find
under
it.
Under reaction, there is like a raise and lower hand.
Ah, okay. So.
But you can also say that you want, yeah.
Yeah.
Add UX.
Anna wanted to say something.
Yeah.
Is this form of tabbed navigation at the top the only one that we are still considering? Or do we still want to try a version in which tabs are smaller than they or take less space, but they are under the title? And the reason I'm asking is, while you showed how these tabs can become responsive if you with the window, there are places where it's still going to be quite hard to do so. So one example is what we have now in cloud alerting. So in our case, the application is called Grafana Cloud Alerting. So already you have a very long title, and then you have 4 or 5 tabs. So in that particular case, even if you reduce it to one menu item, even the title might not fit in. So that's why I'm asking if you still want to explore an alternative to this.
Yeah, so I tried, but then the title just basically takes that vertical bar space, definitely. So I was considering like connecting breadcrumbs with that title as well, but then the breadcrumbs can be really long as well. But yeah, definitely that is important. But I think like it's a problem as with many elements of the navigation. The question is, should we maybe just have a shorter name for that? So as with what happens if we have 12 elements in the navigation, maybe we can have like less than 12 elements in navigation, or introduce second level of navigation. So yeah, I hear you. I will definitely like put some mock-ups on that and check when it starts to break compared to what we have right now. So yeah.
David, you had a comment also?
Yes. So for me, it's more sort of like a very high level comment, which is I also really like the OS for observability metaphor. The main question for me is, like, in your opinion, are we sort of still reinventing the wheel here somehow in sort of like compared to other vendors, right? So if someone already comes a bit from the observability space, will they be confused by this sort of new, really neat way that we do things now, or do we have a chance of just still feeling a bit intuitive because it's somehow still a bit related to how other people are doing it?
So yeah, they're confused right now. That's my like challenging answer number one, especially the people who are not super familiar with Grafana, definitely. And yeah, we could say that maybe we can just take a navigation that is already done by someone else. But then, first of all, we never know whether it works actually. The second thing is that there always will be differences in how each of the products work. And as I mentioned before, I really wanted that concept to play nice with what we have right now. So I strongly believe that it does. So it is not revolutionary on a way that we need to redesign and restructure everything for that to work. So we can be like incremental, incremental in the changes. So and of course, like if we have a time, and I believe we have, we can test that approach with people, run a usability study and see whether people understand it or not. I can bet that they will.
Cool. Yeah, cool. I just wanted to be a bit devil's advocate here.
Yeah, but yeah, totally get it. But this is why maybe on the surface it doesn't look like a huge of a change, maybe for many of you, because it is basically not that much of a change. So this is why at some point I restricted like myself from coming up with a super flashy new ways of navigating things.
Yeah. What are the next steps? I'm sorry, Torko.
Yeah, I'm just not sure if you have much time, but I Luke presented this earlier to me. That's why I joined late and I have been quiet. But yeah, because this is I'm super passionate about kind of what we do here, because this is so impactful, and I'm really loving as well the high level kind of looking at Grafana as an operating system, and I think there's a lot of sort of great things in that metaphor, and the home thing, and kind of refining the thing, how you create dashboards. Yeah, the create menu on the side is super confusing to have that as a top level thing. So I think that's the only thing that my own main concern is, like, yeah, the using horizontal tabs as main navigation. Yeah, feels like it breaks down into space requirements really easily, and also it's much harder to scan read many horizontal things and find what you're looking for compared to sort of many pages that are so stacked vertically. So that's the only thing that concern here is, like, yeah, how this will actually work with like the data source settings page, the org configuration, where we have many sub views and sub pages, and kind of horizontal tabs just breaks down very quickly.
And I'm looking to explore that. I already did, like, especially Torkel for you, this mock-up here, which like moves forward with our morning discussion of how the dashboard settings might look like, and how to also incorporate that breadcrumbs part in that. So yeah. But as I mentioned in the beginning, I haven't went into navigating the specific object yet.
Yeah.
So we're out of time. Oana is still raising her hand. Oana, is that still up to date?
Is it? Sorry, no. It's really bad here.
Okay, so thank you very much. If you have any additional comments, like please reach out to me, and I will be even super happy to talk to you individually if you have any comments, and I will read the doc afterwards, definitely. And yeah, we'll be working on that, probably seeing a lot of you on next occasions.
Okay. Awesome.
Cool. Thank you.
All right, cool. So next up is myself. So let me share my screen. All right, here we go. So I am addressing the logs navigation. And some of you might already know the problem because it's been there in Grafana for a while, but just to give you a quick recap. So let's say I'm in Explorer and I just open it, like this is an empty Explorer. And now I am picking some labels to run a query, and I'm picking like purposely a big one. So it's running now. And as you can see, my time range here is an hour. And like this here, what I'm seeing in the graph is obviously not an hour. So the more advanced users are probably familiar with this, but what exactly is happening here? Why do I only see like, I don't know, a second or two instead of my hour? That happens because down here, the log lines are only returned up to a certain limit, which is currently 1000. All right, so if I understand that I have reached the limit and that's why I only see 1000 lines, then maybe I want to see more and load more, but I don't know, I can go through them. As you can see, it's a lot, but okay, they just stop. So what do I do now? Currently, to fix that problem, the first approach would be, okay, I probably need to tweak the time range. 2 seconds, probably means, you know, I have to like do this or something, not so convenient, maybe do 3. But even if I do 3 seconds or 5 to see more, I don't know, then I would still hit that limit. So how can I change the limit? It's actually up here. But here it just says auto, so it's really hard to understand that this and this are even the same control and change the same thing. So that's one part of the problem. And then also, if I just scroll down here, it would be really nice to be able, or even in the middle of these log lines, to decide, okay, like I'm 2 seconds in, I want more. Can I just get a button or have some pagination or some controls to update this? Yes, so that's why I jumped into UX solution mode. I did run research last year with Explore users about how this should behave, and people were a bit on the fence. Like some said pagination is awesome, some said pagination is a really bad idea. And in the end, I decided not to explore pagination because most of the time people use a relative time range. So if you page back in time and then you have a relative time range here, what about the newer log lines? Like the relative point in time where your page 1 is could change, and then it could just get really confusing, right? So that's why I didn't want to do that. So instead, I started exploring Figma here and decided to just do a load more button. So one thing that I generally introduce that is present in all my solution options is this new button here, which just loads 1000 more lines. And a clever little thing that Nico came up with is also to give not just the load 1000 more button, and also the 1000, of course, should change depending on what your line limit is. If you have a 2000 line limit, you should be able to just load 2000 more. So basically just double your limit. But this little arrow is supposed to open a dropdown where you can not just load those 2000 or I don't know, whatever your limit is, but have the option to load even more at once up to a certain point where it makes sense. And the calculation of like what we can offer the user, how many more they could load, we could base on the relation between what their current line limit is and the entire time range. So for example, if I have a 5-minute time range here, then I would like to give some visual feedback of how many % of their time range they are currently seeing as a user. And then we could say, oh, it's only 16% and it's the line limit. So if we have like 84% more of log lines to load, that could be a lot of log lines. So we don't want to offer the users who load all of them because it could break their Grafana. But then like with that gauge, how many % of their full logs they're seeing, we could offer them like how much more they could realistically load at once to not break their Grafana, but still get like as many more log lines as possible. So that's the first approach, just like add this little highlight here where they can see how much am I currently seeing. And then also this little line limit indicator here should have a link where if you click there, you would jump directly in the top input here and could edit it so that even if you don't notice this at first, you could click here and then see, I can edit that in the top here. I understand and have a little learning experience. So another thing that I wanted to play with was to somehow indicate to the user, like with the scroll bar, where they're at in the logline timeline. But this is probably really hard to understand. So like I tried to play around with that, but I don't really like the idea that much. If you have any good ideas how to pursue that further, please suggest that, but otherwise I would just drop it. Then a third thing that I wanted to explore is giving a more obvious feedback that people are not seeing their full time range. Because at least for me, if I don't look at my timestamps here and compare them to the global time range button, I wouldn't maybe even notice, oh, this is kind of different, like this is much less. So this indicator in the bottom here, that's maybe not prominent enough. So we could make it a little more prominent by giving some sort of info box further in the top. And then another thing that I explored was like this cut off histogram here is something we only introduced a few months ago. Before, you would always see kind of something like this, where you would only see the percentage of your full histogram that was actually loaded, but this was not here. So originally it looked kind of like, I don't know, can I remove this fast? Yeah, it basically was empty except for this. And then that was problematic because users didn't know, why is there so much empty space here? Is it broken? Are there just no log lines there? So we could bring this back, but then we would have to add some sort of feedback, like this is not empty, but you're currently only seeing 5% of your time range and there could be more. So another option of that would be to add also a presence indicator of where you are at within your log lines, but that probably doesn't make as much sense if you're just scrolling and the histogram goes away. So maybe we want to play around with a sticky histogram. I also have a vertical version because Elastic does that in the 5th solution. And here is also a version where only part of your histogram would be cut off, like maybe enough to show a notification that like your histogram would be bigger, but you're not seeing all of your time range, so that we would still have more space to actually show graph stuff, but still have space for that. So that's one idea. And then I was looking at how our competition does this, and for Elastic logs, they have this sort of vertical time bar, and instead of showing a bar chart for their log lines like we do, they have this sort of mirrored line graph thingy, and the blue highlight shows you what part of your time range you're actually seeing. So I was wondering whether we could steal the vertical idea and experiment with that. So I tried to sort of build that and use the bars. The problematic bit here is that the added level of information with maybe having, I don't know, 6 or 8 or even more different categories of log lines, that could be tricky to do in this vertical version. But I also felt like the presence indicator of where I am in the lines could be nice. And also, like, this kind of seems unnecessary to have this duplication. So we could even experiment with having this one and then saving on the vertical space here and giving the user more log lines at once. Yeah, so these are all my ideas. Feedback, please. Oh, sorry, I talked for too long, but maybe we can do 5 more minutes of discussion.
Wow, that's
yeah.
wow.
Wow.
I don't even know where to start.
I've got to start. I think I really like the info boxes, and the load 1000 more. I'm not sure that the first couple of info boxes necessarily draw a connection between the empty space in the graph and the line limit, though. You kind of address that in the fourth one a bit. Where
I mean, this one is too detached.
Yeah.
I think there's one, like this idea of having vertical, what it's called?
Histogram.
Histogram, thank you. Felt a bit odd at the beginning. But now when I think about it, you can move presence indicator and you just scroll through logs. So it's like you go in the same direction, both with this histogram and log, so you can see exactly where you're at.
Yes, and the way that we already do it with this one, you can zoom by dragging and dropping some area on the histogram, and that you could still be doing in the vertical one, which could be very convenient. But we have 2 people raising hands, so sorry.
Sorry, okay. I'll limit myself to this comment.
Okay, Nico, you were first. You're muted.
You're muted.
Maybe that's good, because then I can like say it the second time, prepare it better. So I'm not too big a fan of the tooltip. And the reason is, I think in most cases, people will not have the full range of data, and therefore I think it makes sense as a constant visual feedback that's on the page rather than a notification that pops up.
Yeah, but I was thinking that this would just stay here. Like, this wouldn't be just temporary.
And that's kind of the next thing. Like, I think you should be very careful with laying stuff on top of the graphs, on the whole metaphor, don't get in the way of the data. But is there a reason why it would not just be like a snack bar pop-up that pops up for like 5 seconds in one of the corners and say like, we loaded 5%, just to be aware? Like when it's a very low percentage.
We could experiment with that. The issue I see is that if people run a lot of queries, then they would keep getting a pop-up, and that could become annoying. But I will think about that further. Good suggestion.
Be when it's just low percentages. So it's just like, hey, you have less than 25% of your graph. Like,
yeah. Okay. So Luke was next.
So I specifically super liked the tiny progress bar, that appeared somewhere on the screens. It is really nice. I was at some point I was even thinking that maybe it could go like next to the logs title on the panel. The only comment about thinking about something is that if we have this like edit log limits, and you can actually do it in 2 places. If I click log limits where it is like a link, so just above the logs, and I am focused on the input above, I think like peripheral vision of people will not catch that, and people will not understand what is happening. And I think like the further explorations of like loading more things is just maybe a better thing. So to show on those logs, or whenever we say like, hey, we didn't load it all the logs, load more and load more and load more to be like more obvious, and just leave away the default input feature where it is, and not duplicate that. But
Okay, thank you. Because we're almost out of time, I will just
Yeah.
not comment. All right, so we have 3 more people who are raising their hand and only 2 more
Dieter.
minutes left. So
Yeah.
make it short, Dieter.
Yeah, I feel like my opinion is apparently the opposite of what some of the previous commenters have said, but I really like the idea of centralizing as much as you can within one widget. So the histogram that also shows the range that you cannot see on the same chart as the actual data. I personally really love that. I also like having the presence there, and to your point about the presence not being visible, there's some solutions to that, like turning it into a vertical one as you did. Or I was also thinking maybe once you start scrolling down to actually reduce the size of the main histogram a little bit to kind of have the best of both worlds. I have some more notes, but I'll share them in the doc later so that someone else can comment something if they want.
Awesome, thank you. Torkel, I think, was first.
Yeah, no, to me, I really like the horse or the vertical kind of histogram in terms of just being so connected with the log lines. As you scroll, you see that, and it's very intuitive to sort of place your cursor on the timeline and then kind of jump to a spot where there might not be any logs because you haven't loaded it, and then Grafana can request data for that time range with some kind of be smart around which about the range there. So it feels very, I don't know, it feels very connected to what the scrolling and looking at the histogram. It's maybe sort of a bit untraditional or unconventional to have only this view, but it's technically a bit harder, I think, for our graph component. But I think it's an interesting option.
Awesome. I think Juana was also raising her hand, but I think she dropped.
I think she may have jumped to another meeting, yeah.
All right, yeah, I will follow up with her then. So thank you so much for all of your feedback. This was super helpful as always. Thank you also, Luke, for your amazing and thorough presentation. So as we are about to finish this conversation, thank you, YouTubers, for checking in with us. If you have feedback and comments, drop them under this video. And for the Graphanistas here, see you soon. And if you have any feedback how we can make these calls any better, just drop them